Okay, so this is just a short recording talking about the surprise broadcast that we had today on February 3rd, the Korean server, where the three leaders kind of gave us some insights regarding the upcoming content happening on February 15th in Korea, but also answering some topical questions that have been really popular in the Korean community and also the Western community to some extent in the last couple of weeks, or actually the last several weeks since level on. So today's broadcast covered, first of all, Voldis. Voldis, you'll also hear people call it Voldis, which is the Korean name, but the name of this continent is called Voldis in the West, so I'm going to call it Voldis. This is a brand new continent that happens after the events of Pletch, which happens after the events of El Geisha, which happens after the events of Rowan, which in the West, you guys are getting Rowan this month. So you can kind of eye out how there's a few continents after that before you get to what I'm talking about now. Voldis itself, we got the item level requirement to do just the main story, which is 1520. It's a little on the high side considering the previous one was 1475. But they mentioned that they did this because Korean users were complaining that despite our item levels going up so high, they were wondering why each of the continents were only 15 item levels apart. They kind of separated this one out a little bit more. Voldis is a continent that is located between Punica and Yorn, and just the short lore of it is when the priests who split off from Sacria were expelled by Lord Thermer, some of them went to Arthatine and they developed, Stern, the Techno City, and then some of them went to establish a new ivory tower in Voldis, which is where we are now. And if you're trying to imagine what this looks like, literally think Wakanda from Black Panther, and it is like exactly that, even down to the skin tone of the citizens. They are technologically and philosophically superior to much of the rest of the world, and it's like isolated city, and that's basically Black Panther. So we got the item level to do the main story, which is 1520. And we also got the item level for the Abyssal Dungeon, which is 1600 for normal mode and 1620 for hard mode. It doesn't have multiple difficulties to accommodate lower level players like K-Angle, but it does come with a few caveats, one of which being you can actually earn gold from it. The raid itself is 4 gates. They showed us previews of 3 of the bosses in it. The 4th one they couldn't show us because it's spoilers related to the MSQ, so that will be revealed at a later time. After that, they showed us the new progression related system, which is called Alchemy. And Alchemy is several layers of RNG, and to that end, we don't actually know how much it'll impact player power. I'm just going to quickly scroll up so you can see some pictures of the Ivory Tower in Chaos, which is the name of the Abyssal Dungeon, as well as Voldis, which in a lot of ways looks a little bit like El Geisha, but that could just be the altitude. But yeah, the alchemy system is a bit... it's hard to explain, but the best way that I can explain it is you're basically making an ability stone, and whatever the results of that ability stone are, you pour it onto one of your 5 armor slots, and it gives it stats, additional stats. So you're going through an RNG system to create a potion, which you use to imbue one of your 5 armor pieces, and you can imbue all 5 of your armor pieces. You get these elixirs from the dungeon itself, and then you get these from crafting or from wandering merchants. You click gold, and then you click the honing button to the faucet button, and then it has a chance to pick one of these 5 potion effects, and then it presumably, again, we don't fully know how this works, it has a chance to succeed. And we would presume that if that's the case, it starts off at a high percent and gradually goes down and down and down and down and down. And you can see this is level 2 boss damage, because they managed to get 6 faucets completed. And you can see that they get level 3 at 8, level 4 at 9, and then level 5 at 10. So it's pretty backloaded on the higher level effects. Kind of the weird thing about this is, besides for the multiple layers of RNG, is that there's kind of a decision-making aspect with every step along the way. So as you are clicking this fauceting button, you're also talking to these NPCs who could have seriously varied effects. We don't exactly know how they work, but for example, this guy says that he will scramble all the odds. So presumably if you go to him, he'll change out each of these and kind of flip them or move them around. This guy will swap the lowest and the highest, and then this lady, for one attempt, she'll increase the honing success rate of increased attack damage by 15%. So you have to make some decisions as you are fauceting this to influence the outcome. Some people may be wondering, is this a pay-to-win system? Can you brute force it? And to that end, I believe the answer is actually yes, because the things that you get these elixirs from dropping them in raids, but you can also break them down into a powder, which you can use to create new random elixirs, except unlike the powder that you get from breaking down ability stones, the ones that you get from elixirs, you can actually trade them on the auction house. So technically you could buy them off the auction house and then create elixirs ad nauseum and keep crafting these and keep brute forcing it until you eventually get it. Albeit that seems really, really expensive, and I don't think anybody but the whaliest of whales will really be able to do that. So we'll see. But overall, we don't know how much this will actually power creep our characters by until we actually see the values of this. And again, a lot of this stuff is kind of unknown still. For example, this says reroll effects, 1 remaining. And obviously this has to do with this, but we don't know what is the re-rolling. Is it re-rolling the percent odds here? Is it re-rolling the actual effects on the item? Who knows? What is the difference between purple ones and legendary ones? One thing that I can say is a positive thing to this is it does seem to be an extreme gold sink. From what I can gather and from what I can see so far, it looks like just to synthesize 1 potion could cost a few 10,000 gold. And so if we're talking about 1 whole character's set of gear, you may be looking at over 100,000 gold to synthesize a potion and apply it to each of your 5 armor pieces. And depending on how many characters you have, this cost can certainly add up. A lot of people kind of don't like this idea because it sounds expensive and people don't have a lot of gold. But what I will say to this is we need these gold sinks to keep the price of blue crystals lower. There aren't actually a lot of gold sinks in the game because after a certain point, people stop quality tapping, and the amount of gold that's actually being removed from the economy from honing is so little compared to how much people are generating. When you buy materials or expensive accessories off the market, you're not removing that gold from the economy, you're just giving it to someone else, and only a little bit is being removed via tax. So the cost, unfortunately, I actually think is a good thing, but I'm not too keen on this multi-layered RNG progression system in general. It seems a bit much, especially since it does seem you can technically brute force it. Moving down, they showed that there is a change to the structure of rewards associated with high-end contents and raids in general. It's going to be a bit controversial, and you're going to see a lot of people talking about it, but in short, you can continue to get gold from 3 contents every single week. However, you are not locked out of any contents, meaning while you can do, say, 4 different Legion raids, previously you had to pick 3 and get the gold from 3, and then you were locked out of the last one, but now you can actually go to all 4. It's just you're picking the ones that you get the loot from. Yeah, so it kind of sort of encourages more busing, though some would say that it would decrease the cost of buses if more people are doing it. Some would say, oh, this is a good thing because I can do these lower raids and help my guildies out. But, this is the controversial part of it. Now, here's some extra things that need to be known. The first thing is that the Voldis Abyssal Dungeon gives gold. And so it's not a Legion raid, but you can see that it's part of the contents that you'd pick from if you want gold from it or not. And so you might only get gold from 2 Legion raids and then gold from Voldis as an example. Additional loot. You're only allowed to get additional loot from 3 contents per character. You cannot buy additional loot on every single raid that you go to. And this is no different than what it is currently, because you can only go to 3 high-end content anyways. So that part has not changed. What has changed is that you are only allowed to collect additional loot from things that are considered high-end contents. So if I open this image, you can actually see that there is a symbol that denotes that there is a high-end content associated with this type of PvE encounter. And it's this red mark right here. The last thing that needs to be mentioned is that while the amount of stuff that you're collecting from your characters is still 6 characters and 3 contents each, they did do something for your 7th character and onwards if you are playing that many characters. For the 7th character that's a non-gold earner in your roster, they can also collect bonus loot from up to 3 contents, and they do not have to spend gold to get that bonus loot anymore. So that's just something to help out the non-gold earner, as you're saving a little bit of gold on that. And then here we have a side content. They are removing boss rush and cube from the game entirely. Every single cube and every single boss rush. And they are replacing it with a new type of cube called Evni Cube. If you're wondering what's going to happen to your tickets, it seems that you'll be able to exchange your tickets for rewards directly, all existing tickets. So if you have a mountain of boss rush and cube tickets, you can hold on to them and just get some stuff directly from an NPC, because they will be discontinued. Presumably, it'll be less than what you would actually get from using the tickets. But for me, for example, I've got like 700 cube tickets. I ain't going to do them. I'm just going to wait for that NPC and exchange them directly. Evni Cube is kind of interesting. It basically has the rewards from both Boss Rush and Cube, the existing ones of them. And for Evni Cube, they kind of made it so that you can do it much quicker. So currently in Cube, it takes like 18 different rooms or stages. This one is supposed to be a lot less. And there's supposed to be a much greater variety of rooms that you can get. And the loot that you receive can vary depending on the type of room you get. So there will be luckier rooms where you get additional loot as well. And so they also show the item levels for Evni Cube as well. 1302, 1490, 1540, 1580, 1610. And this correlates to the existing boss rush and cubes. This is Gargalon, the Voracious Predator, which is the new Guardian raid, which is introduced at 1610 following Sunnivel at 1580. And they're also adding a Chaos Dungeon, which, as we can see by the loot, is exactly the same as the previous Chaos Dungeon, with the exception of a ticket, which is used for the new Evni Cube. For us in Korea, this update goes live on February 15th, except for the raid itself, which is being time-locked until the following week on February 22nd, which allows players to kind of ease into the contents without having to rush it. If they wanted to quickly rush, get the main story done, and do the raid immediately, now you can take your time with the story, press the G button a little bit slower, and also fight Gargadith or whatever the fuck its name is, to be honest. And yeah, that's that. They also covered a few other topics as well. First thing that they mentioned is regarding the AOS horizontal content, which was the MOBA styled minigame which looked a lot like League of Legends or Dota. They mentioned that for the time being, it is being postponed so that they can focus on making better raid content, as is the players' desire. They want the developers to work on their strengths instead of quote unquote wasting their time with these other contents. So for the time being, the minigame is postponed. Regarding balance, they mentioned that some players are still unhappy with the state of balance, especially with how they simplified certain characters' kits with the current direction of the game. However, they also mentioned that some of the factors of balance are somewhat outside of the scope regarding actual class strength. And what they mean by that is the actual strength of the classes may be tuned pretty decently and is probably as close to balanced as it's ever been before. However, certain outside factors, such as overgearing content, is making it so that the disparity between classes looks worse than it actually is. And you can actually kind of see this, where certain classes in a prolonged fight may be much closer to each other. However, once you outgear content enough, burst may completely overtake consistent damage. And that's like an example of, well, the balance works in some ways, but not in other ways. In certain scenarios, but then not in others. And it kind of makes sense. So while it's not perfect, it's definitely in the right direction, barring those scenarios. They also feel like the developers are out of, by they I mean the players, are a little out of touch in certain things regarding like the actual playstyle of classes, and they did make it evident that they are trying to simplify a lot of the character designs by making it so that they're less convoluted with the faster pace of fights as they continue to develop quicker and more complex encounters. They also mentioned PvP, but I think honest to God, I cannot remember it, and most people don't care about PvP, but it had something to do with the new player experience of getting absolutely dumpstered by existing PvP players due to the excessively steep learning curve associated with PvP in Lost Ark. So I honestly cannot remember for the life of me what they said regarding that. Yeah, so I think that covers basically everything. We've got a little less than 2 weeks until the update. It does seem to be quite a lot. There are many questions that are still unanswered, especially regarding the alchemy system, and we'll have to, I guess, just see when we get it. One more point about the alchemy system is that the effects that they showed are not all of the effects. There are many effects, and it's clear that some are better than others, which may be indicated by the purple and legendary rarity of elixirs that we saw on the left-hand side. Presumably you get purple ones from normal, and legendary ones from hard mode. And the effects seem to be pretty varied, including set effect bonuses on certain effects. So kind of like hammer and wedge on bracelets, you'd be able to get 2 effects on an elixir, and they would have an additional effect if you have both of them. Or who knows, there could be even more. Maybe it could be a 3 set. We don't actually know how the elixirs apply to the items yet either. We don't know if you get a universal effect and a part specific effect like on shoulders or helmets, if you get both effects when applying the elixir to the item, or if you have to choose between one. This is all questions that are TBD, that we will, I guess, see in due time. But just a quick summation of my thoughts on all this. I think the item level for these things is fine for the most part. 1620 is a little bit high, I think, for the Abyssal Dungeon, because it doesn't really leave a lot of headroom for Famine, and then later on Kazaros after that. So we're getting pretty close to the item level cap, and these items are fairly difficult to hone all in all. The alchemy system, I am not so keen on it. It does seem like a lot of layers of RNG. I mean, you need vertical progression in a game like this, in the gear treadmill that we're all, you know, little hamsters running on. But this just seems like a lot, and again, we don't really have any idea of how much it'll actually power creep the characters by. Will we be 10% stronger than this, 20%, 30%, 50%? Who knows? We haven't had a really big power spike since the actual sets were even implemented into the game, so this could potentially be a pretty drastic shift in power upwards. Regarding the content changes to acquisition of gold, good for people who play a lot of characters, and also probably good if you're into busing, though you should expect more competition. But I guess it's okay. It's really not that different from the previous system all in all, so I don't really have any major gripes with it, besides for the fact that I just might see more buses in the party finder. Which could be annoying, but you know, that's why they added inclusion and exclusion rules to the search, so that you could filter out certain text that you don't want to see when you're in the party finder, such as either gatekeeping or bus parties. The new cube, I mean, it might be cool. It might be a quick content that just gives you a lot of rewards quickly, and I think that's kind of what's needed, or what might be nice, is just the ability to get a big treasure trove of rewards and just a quick activity. Hopefully the rooms themselves are fun. And as a side note, they did mention that this cube has a lot of Easter eggs related to the lore, because the cube actually has actually kind of cool lore, which you learn about in Algacia. And apparently the new cube has Easter eggs which can reveal hints about where the story is actually headed, but perhaps even beyond the events of Kazaros and the Legion Commanders. So I'll probably be keeping a lookout on that personally, as someone actually who likes lore. Gargadeth is pretty interesting because I think the devs actually joked about it. They were like, oh, we know you hate Sonavel, so hopefully you'll be happy fighting Gargadeth instead. Honestly, the gameplay video of Gargadeth looked a little cancer, but I mean, how much worse can it possibly be compared to Sonavel? Sonavel's just annoying. I mean, the dude fucking hits you with an attack that reduces your crit chance. That's horrible. That's just unfun. So I think anything is better than that. Hopefully he doesn't hop around and as much as Sonavel does, like the instant backsteps. And the Chaos Dungeon is just a Chaos Dungeon. There's nothing to really talk about there. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Their live stream was by and far way better than what I kind of expected. I thought it was gonna be kind of trash, like the Q&A and low on, but this is basically what the Q&A and low on should have been. Oh yeah, and they also mentioned something about Soul Eater and Male Scrapper. They mentioned why they decided to go with that. Well, I don't think they went too in depth regarding Soul Eater, but in regards to Male Scrapper, they basically were just like, we just wanted like the most different thing that we could possibly think of from Soul Eater. And that's how they arrived at Male Scrapper, more or less. So it's like, well, okay then. Not really much of an answer, but it is what it is. Okay. Yeah, so that's just a recap. I'll probably try and do these occasionally. Yep. Looking forward to checking out the update on the 15th in KSD. That's 14th for everyone in the West.